Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Sunday, February 3rd, 2019, Super Bowl Sunday. I'm going to go over the NFL awards that were given out last night, go over college basketball, NBA, and NHL games, look ahead to today's games in each of those slates. Each of them are smaller slates because of the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the Super Bowl a little bit, talk about Nick Foles and what Philly plans to do, and I'll give my best bet of the day. All right, the NFL awards last night. MVP, to nobody's surprise, Patrick Mahomes, well-deserved for the player that was the best player in the league literally the entire season. Certainly the most valuable player. The Chiefs don't get to the AFC Championship game without him. The Chiefs don't win the division without him. And he's going to be an MVP candidate for years to come. And the Offensive Player of the Year also went to Mahomes, who was deserving of that as well. He had 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, so that shouldn't be anybody's surprise. Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald. No surprise there. Aaron Donald was the best defensive player in the league this year. Now he's led the Rams to the Super Bowl. And that guy is back-to-back winner, by the way. And then the Offensive Rookie of the Year, Saquon Barkley. That should surprise nobody. He earned this award. He played all 16 weeks. Made a bad offensive line look good. A washed-up quarterback look good. And yeah, it didn't really impact the team's win-loss total because it's a quarterback-driven league. But Saquon certainly was the best rookie. And he's deserving of Rookie of the Year on the offensive end of things. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield didn't play all 16 games. And Hugh Jackson, if he realized how good he was, and if he started all 16 weeks, maybe he would have won it instead of Saquon. But Saquon did earn this award, in my opinion. Defensive Rookie of the Year went to Darius Leonard of the Indianapolis Colts. That's very deserving. He was a tackling machine his rookie year. The Colts found themselves a building block on defense for years to come. So that is a well-deserving. And then Derwin James was certainly a great candidate for the award. But the impact Leonard has, I think, outweighs the impact that James had, because there are other great players on that Chargers defense, like Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram. And Chargers secondary was actually okay before James got there, but the Colts defense was an atrocity before Leonard got there. And then Leonard, with the help of some player improvements with like Malik Hooker in the secondary, certainly has made this Colts defense decent. Coach of the Year is Matt Nagy of the Chicago Bears. I forgot to predict that on yesterday's podcast, but I would have been right. I would have said Matt Nagy as my Coach of the Year. And my runner-up would have been either John Harbaugh or Pete Carroll. Let's go with Pete Carroll as my runner-up, because nobody thought that Seattle was a playoff team before the year. Some people thought that the Ravens could have been a contender, but nobody thought Seattle was going to be good. So let's give my runner-up to Pete Carroll. But Nagy, first-year head coach that took his team to a division title, lost courtesy of the missed kick by Cody Parkey. But the Bears, you have to say that their season is a smashing success. This team isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Mitch Trubisky showed some improvements in year 2 from year 1. He's the key to their long-term success. If he continues to improve, they'll be a contender for years. Their defense will always be pretty good, led by Khalil Mack, which, by the way, Mack's addition to that team, I think, galvanized that team. To have a franchise defensive player like that on your team. Yeah, you gave up a lot to get him, but it was certainly worth it for Mack. But if Trubisky keeps on improving, this team is going to be a contender for years to come. He's the entire key to this because you need a quarterback to win. And you saw Houston, you saw Kansas City. Both of those teams were in the playoffs this year. The Chiefs made the AFC title game. The Texans made it to round one. And Watson and Mahomes are the two other quarterbacks taken in the first round. And both of those quarterbacks had breakthrough years and made the Pro Bowl. And Trubisky was in the Pro Bowl too. You got to give him credit for that. But I think that was more about team success than player success, though, in terms of Trubisky's part. But Watson had a solid bounce-back year. Not as exciting as his rookie year, but he was still pretty good. And then Mahomes was flat out the best quarterback in the league this year. So, yeah, Trubisky has to improve for the Bears to be a long-term contender, but they certainly made the right coaching hire with Matt Nagy, who was deserving of the Coach of the Year award. The comeback player of the year is Andrew Luck. I also was correct on this. He led the Colts to the second round of the playoffs. Like I said, very deserving of this award, and is the biggest reason why the Colts are going to be a contender next year and for years to come as long as Luck stays healthy. And nobody thought he was going to come back and be the player he was so fast, and that's what happened with Luck. And then my runner-up was J.J. Watt, who got a lot of votes as well. And I talked about Watt yesterday and how he had his best season since before he suffered those injuries. So he was also another good candidate for that award as well. Now we're going to go to college basketball and go over all the results from yesterday's big slate of games. And it was a pretty big slate. There were some big upsets in there in the big conferences, which we'll get to. With that said, number 2, Duke defeats St. John's 91-61. Number 12, Virginia Tech defeats number 23, NC State 47-24. Yes, that's a final score. Number 25, Florida State defeats Georgia Tech 59-49. South Florida defeats Memphis 84-78. That game was a blowout. Memphis came back and made that interesting. Kent State defeats Ball State 83-80 in overtime. Butler defeats Seton Hall 70-68. Miami of Ohio defeats Eastern Michigan 59-48. Ohio State defeats Rutgers 76-62. West Virginia defeats Oklahoma 79-71. Georgia State defeats Georgia Southern 81-72. Siena defeats Iona 56-54. Lehigh defeats Army 75-70. Youngstown State defeats Detroit Mercy 72-70. Wofford defeats the Citadel 99-61. South Carolina defeats Georgia 86-80. Boston University defeats Colgate 76-68. Number 3, Virginia defeats Miami 56-46. Number 9, North Carolina defeats number 15, Louisville 79-69. Number 20, Iowa State defeats Texas 65-60. Monmouth defeats Rider 75-71. Southern Illinois defeats Bradley 72-68. Campbell defeats Longwood 83-62. Coastal Carolina defeats Louisiana 96-79. Drake defeats Indiana State 68-62. Notre Dame defeats Boston College 79-73. Evansville defeats Valparaiso 64-53. Wichita State defeats Tulsa 79-68. Dayton defeats Duquesne 68-64. Appalachian State defeats UL Monroe 85-84. Bucknell defeats Lafayette 94-66. American defeats Holy Cross 66-49. Radford defeats Winthrop 80-61. Navy defeats Loyola Maryland 71-68. Illinois defeats Nebraska 71-64. DePaul defeats Providence 67-55. Toledo defeats Northern Illinois 69-55. Oakland defeats Cleveland State 83-68. Gardner-Webb defeats UNC Asheville 82-81 in overtime. My bad. Sanford defeats Western Carolina 92-81. Number 22, Mississippi State defeats Ole Miss 81-75. Sacred Heart defeats St. Francis Brooklyn 71-62. Central Connecticut State defeats Bryant 64-59. Akron defeats Ohio 65-53. Number 7, Kentucky defeats Florida 65-54. Kentucky closed that game very well. Florida had the lead for a majority of it. Number 11, Kansas defeats number 16, Texas Tech 79-63. Lamar defeats McNeese 84-75. St. Francis, Pennsylvania defeats Mount St. Mary 72-63. Colorado State defeats Air Force 85-53. Maryland Eastern defeats South Carolina State 63-61. Norfolk State defeats Howard 80-78. Bethune-Cookman defeats NC Central 74-64. Southern Miss defeats FAU 74-72. William & Mary defeats Delaware 84-63. Washington defeats UCLA 69-55. Florida A&M defeats NCAT 63-39. North Texas defeats Charlotte 73-66. Savannah State defeats Delaware State 76-73. Furman defeats Mercer 74-63. St. Mary's defeats San Francisco 86-80. Coppin State defeats Morgan State 73-71. Charleston defeats Towson 54-53. Wagner defeats LIU Brooklyn 71-59. Rhode Island defeats St. Louis 65-54. Stetson defeats Kennesaw State 92-75. Moorhead State defeats Eastern Illinois 84-78. Charleston Southern defeats South Carolina Upstate 90-71. St. Joe's defeats UMass 64-62. Central Michigan defeats Western Michigan 85-64. Northeastern defeats Hofstra 75-61. Fairleigh Dickinson defeats Robert Morris 97-94 in double overtime. Utah State defeats UNLV 82-65. East Tennessee State defeats Chattanooga 77-64. Austin Peay defeats Jacksonville State 74-71. Lipscomb defeats North Alabama 102-80. Southeast Louisiana defeats Nichols 91-70. Texas Arlington defeats Texas State 84-77 in double overtime. Northwestern State defeats Central Arkansas 80-75. Oregon State defeats Utah 81-72. New Mexico State defeats Chicago State 83-39. Eastern Washington defeats Southern Utah 82-79. New Orleans defeats Incarnate Word 89-72. Vermont defeats UMass Lowell 74-65. Indiana upsets number 6 Michigan State 79-75 in overtime. Michigan State was missing Jeremy Langford. Indiana was missing one of their key players. Give credit to Romeo Langford and Archie Miller and company to pull off this monster upset that keeps Indiana in the picture for an at-large bid. Number 8, Nevada defeats Boise State 93-73. Arkansas upsets number 19 LSU 90-89. Prairie View defeats Alabama A&M 81-65. LaSalle defeats Richmond 66-58. Temple defeats Tulane 75-67. South Alabama defeats Troy 81-75. Grambling defeats Arkansas Pine Bluff 79-55. Syracuse defeats Pitt 65-56. Kansas State defeats Oklahoma State 75-57. Belmont defeats Tennessee Martin 82-67. VCU defeats George Mason 79-63. Arkansas State defeats Little Rock 84-83. Jackson State defeats Mississippi Valley State 61-57. Alcorn State defeats Southern 76-64. Liberty defeats NJIT 77-57. Fairfield defeats Marist 57-52. UTSA upsets Marshall 116-106 in overtime. Stony Brook defeats Hartford 86-77. Harvard defeats Brown 68-47. Yale defeats Dartmouth 89-68. Western Kentucky defeats UTEP 76-59. USC defeats Washington State 93-84. Drexel defeats Elon 67-63. Albany defeats Binghamton 64-50. Old Dominion defeats Rice 80-76. High Point defeats Hampton 85-69. Manhattan defeats St. Peter's 64-50. FIU defeats Louisiana Tech 75-69. James Madison defeats UNT Wilmington 104-95. Florida Gulf Coast defeats Jacksonville 73-60. Princeton defeats Cornell 70-61 in overtime. Number 1 Tennessee defeats Texas A&M 93-76. Number 4 Gonzaga defeats San Diego 85-69. Baylor defeats TCU 90-64. SIU Edwardsville defeats Eastern Kentucky 88-82 in double overtime. Northern Iowa defeats Missouri State 64-59. Penn defeats Columbia 72-70. Middle Tennessee defeats UAB 79-78. Purdue Fort Wayne defeats Oral Roberts 82-81. Houston Baptist defeats Texas A&M Corpus Christi 73-72. North Dakota State defeats Western Illinois 78-76. Sam Houston State defeats Stephen F. Austin 94-72. Cincinnati defeats SMU 73-68. Auburn defeats Alabama 84-63. Texas Rio Grande defeats UMKC 75-63. Missouri defeats Vanderbilt 77-67. Murray State defeats Tennessee Tech 67-63. Tennessee State defeats Southeast Missouri State 79-50. Texas Southern defeats Alabama State 83-59. Weber State defeats Sacramento State 75-65. Montana defeats Montana State 83-78. Santa Clara defeats Portland 69-63 in overtime. San Diego State defeats San Jose State 67-56. BYU defeats Loyola Marymount 67-49. UC Davis defeats UC Riverside 84-71. Idaho State defeats Portland State 69-67. Colorado defeats Oregon 73-51. Pacific defeats Pepperdine 66-59. Northern Arizona defeats Idaho 67-73. UC Irvine defeats Long Beach State 82-80. Grand Canyon defeats Cal State Bakersfield 72-59. Cal State Northridge defeats Cal Poly 83-65. Illinois State defeats Loyola Chicago 65-57. Cal Baptist defeats Seattle 75-64. Fresno State defeats New Mexico 82-70. And UC Santa Barbara defeats Hawaii 75-54. Today's slate is smaller due to Super Bowl Sunday, obviously. At 12 noon on Fox Sports 1, you have Georgetown at number 14, Villanova. Villanova is an 11.5-point favorite. They're going to win, and they'll cover. 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network, Minnesota at number 17, Purdue. Purdue's favored by 11.5. Purdue's playing good ball. They'll win, but Minnesota will cover. ESPNU, Wake at Clemson. Clemson's favored by 15. They'll win and cover. 1 o'clock, New Hampshire at Maine. Xavier at Creighton. Creighton's favored by 6. They'll win and cover. North Dakota against Omaha. Wright State at IUPUI. 2 o'clock, Quinnipiac and Niagara. ESPN News, East Carolina at UConn. UConn's favored by 13.5. I think UConn wins, but East Carolina covers. 3 o'clock, South Dakota State at Denver. 4 o'clock, Northern Kentucky at UIC. And then 4 o'clock on ESPN News, Stanford at Cal. Stanford's favored by 5.5. I think Stanford wins, but Cal covers. All right, NBA. There was a lot of games yesterday. And there are some interesting results. The Clippers defeat the Pistons 111-101. The Hornets defeat the Bulls 125-118. The Magic defeat the Nets 102-89. Bucks defeat the Wizards 131-115. The Mavs defeat the Cavaliers, 111-98. Pacers defeat the Heat 95-88. That was their first win without Victor Oladipo. Spurs defeat the Pelicans 113-108. The Warriors defeat the Lakers 115-101. That final score is deceiving because the Lakers played well and had a double-digit lead in the third quarter. LeBron James did not play. The Nuggets defeat the Timberwolves 107-106. The Hawks defeat the Suns 118-112. The Rockets defeat the Jets 125-98. And the Kings defeat the 76ers 115-108. 3 games today. 1 o'clock, you have the Grizzlies at the Knicks. The players the Knicks got back in the Porzingis deal are playing today in DeAndre Jordan and Dennis Smith Jr. Both those guys will start. And Wes Matthews is probably coming off the bench. But I do think that the veterans and Matthews and Jordan will be buyouts or traded. Smith Jr., I think, is the only keeper of the players that they got in the deal. Or he could be a trade asset down the road. 2 o'clock ABC, the Thunder at the Celtics. Celtics are favored by 3.5. This is going to be a good game. Tough call. This feels like a good game in overtime. Thunder always rise to the occasion on national TV. I think this game's going to be close. So give me the Thunder plus the 3.5. Won't be surprised if they win this game outright. But I'm going to take the Celtics to win, but OKC to cover. I think it's going to be that close of a game. I'm going to say the Celtics win in overtime by 2 points. And then at 3 o'clock, you have the Clippers at the Raptors. Now I'll move on to the NHL, where there were a lot of games yesterday. The Oilers defeat the Flyers 5-4 in overtime. The Devils defeat the Canadiens 3-2 in overtime. The Maple Leafs defeat the Penguins 3-2. The Red Wings defeat the Senators 2-0. The Panthers defeat the Golden Knights 3-1. The Islanders defeat the Kings 4-2. The Blues defeat the Blue Jackets 4-2. The Jets defeat the Ducks 9-3. Yes, that's the score. That looks like a football score. The Stars defeat the Predators 3-1. The Blackhawks defeat the Wild 4-3 in overtime. The Lightning defeat the Rangers 3-2. The Canucks defeat the Avalanche 5-1. And the Sharks defeat the Coyotes 3-2 in overtime. Only 3 games today because of Super Bowl Sunday. All day games as well. 12:30 NBC. The Bruins at the Capitals. This should be a good one on the call. It will be John Forslund with Brian Boucher and Ray Ferraro. I like the Capitals in this spot. They came out of their funk a little bit with the big win in overtime the other day. Don't like how the Bruins have played of late. Give me Washington at home. And then 2 o'clock you have the Oilers at the Canadiens and the Flames at the Hurricanes. Now I'm going to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit. Obviously it's the Rams and it's the Patriots. I took the Patriots minus 2.5. I think the Rams have a chance to win, but just can't bet against the Patriots. I have a feeling there's bad karma for the Rams after the refs kind of gift-wrapped them that game. They took advantage of the bad call, and they know that. There's been players that have been there and done that on the Rams before, like Aqib Talib, who has a Super Bowl ring. But this Patriots team's going to be motivated. They lost last year to the Eagles in a game which they should have won. And I really think that they're going to go out there and give themselves a game. I predicted 37-30 as my final score on the podcast yesterday. Now I'm going to go position by position advantages. Tom Brady, Jared Goff. Come on. Todd Brady is the answer. Running backs. You have this duo of C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley, and you have the trio of Sonny Michel, Rex Burkhead, and James White. I'm going to give the edge to the Rams here because of the play of C.J. Anderson throughout the playoffs. Todd Gurley's going to be rested. I think he's the biggest wild card of the game. If he comes out and looks like the Todd Gurley we know him to be, then the Rams have an excellent chance of winning the game. And the Gurley uncertainty is another big reason why I took New England as well. If Todd Gurley was 100%, I would have absolutely taken the Rams. So that's something to look out for, but I'm going to give the edge to the Rams there because of the play of C.J. Anderson in the playoffs. Wide receivers. On the Rams, you have Josh Reynolds, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods. Patriots, Philip Dorsett, Julian Edelman, and Chris Hogan. I'm going to give the edge to the Rams. Cooks and Woods have been very good throughout the playoffs, been getting big first rounds. Reynolds is a good number 3 guy. Edelman will be used a lot throughout the big game. Chris Hogan's going to make some big plays. Philip Dorsett's caught some big passes in the playoffs for New England. But I really like Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods more than the Patriots receivers. Tight end, Rob Gronkowski and Dwayne Allen. He's the second stringer. They don't use him that much. And on the other side, you have Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. I'm going to take the Patriots side on this because I do think this is going to be Rob Gronkowski's last game. I really do. And I really think that Gronk has had a big impact in the playoffs more than he did in the regular season. He was fantastic against the Chiefs. He was good against the Chargers. And I think he's going to have a great game today in Atlanta. Offensive line. I'm going to give the edge to New England. But the slimmest of edges. Both of these teams have Pro Bowlers on their offensive line. With the Patriots, you have, well, not Pro Bowlers this year, but past Pro Bowlers that are good players. Trent Brown's a very good player. Shaq Mason's good. And then the Rams, you have one of the bigger free agent signings over the last couple years in Andrew Whitworth. And you have, obviously, another good lineman in Roger Saffold, who was an all-pro player this year and deserves a lot of credit for that. But I'm going to take the Patriots O-line, who have given up 0 sacks in the playoffs. Defensive line, I'm giving the edge to the Rams just because of Aaron Donald alone. Patriots do have some okay defensive linemen, but Donald alone gets the edge. And obviously the Rams have Ndamukong Suh, and they also have Dante Fowler Jr., who came in at the deadline. Michael Brockers is a solid player. And then the Patriots, meanwhile, Malcolm Brown's okay. Trey Fowler's is good. Lawrence Guy's okay. But none of them are Aaron Donald. Linebackers, got to give the edge to New England. Dante Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, they're both solid players. Meanwhile, the Rams have some solid guys too. Corey Littleton's pretty good. Mark Barron. Secondary, Rams got the edge. Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters. And then you have Sam Shields, who's okay. Nickel Rebay-Coleman is the guy that should have been flagged for the pass interference, but he's a good player. LaMarcus Joyner's in a contract year. He's had a pretty good year. But don't sleep on the New England secondary, which is also pretty good, and I could have given this edge to them here. They have Stephon Gilmore, who's a Pro Bowler. Patrick Chung's been a Pro Bowler in the past. The McCourty brothers are pretty good. And then special teams have given the edge to the Rams. Craig Zerline's been amazing. Johnny Hector's a good punter. Although Gostkowski's a great kicker, but I think he's headed towards the end of his prime. He's missed some big kicks over the last couple of years, and Ryan Allen's a solid punter of his own as well. Now we're going to talk about the Nick Foles situation with the Eagles. It was reported that they are going to pick up his option and they'll look to trade him. And they're seeking a third-round pick in return. I think that's a smart return for Foles, although I think a second would be necessary. I think a first-rounder is an overpay. I think between a second and the third is a proper price. I do not think the Giants and the Redskins will be in play for him because it's a division rival. I think they want to send him to the AFC. So I think if I had to make a guess of where he lands, I'm going to say it's Jacksonville. I think Tom Coughlin wants a veteran there. And I think Foles would be a fine fit. That's a good defense. They have some talent on offense. Leonard Fournette's future is in doubt. They have some nice receivers. I do think they should shop around in the draft for some young players that are playmakers. The offensive line isn't that bad. They signed Andrew Norwell in the offseason, and then obviously the defense is the heart and soul of that team. So look an eye out for Jacksonville for Foles. Maybe Denver if they decide to get rid of Case Keenum, which I don't think they will. He's on a 2-year deal, so I don't think they'll get rid of him so quickly. But if I had to pick who the favorite is to land Nick Foles, to me it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's without a doubt. Now my best bet of the day brought to you by DraftKings. 16 moneyline parlay, about 2-1 to win, $3.32 as my payout. The Patriots are on there, just on the money line, along with Villanova, Purdue, Clemson, UConn, and the Toronto Raptors. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping the big game, all the plays throughout the big game, the Super Bowl MVP, talk about the props that hit, and then obviously we'll go over NBA, NHL, college hoops, look ahead to tomorrow's slate. We'll do my best bet and break any other news that happens in the world of sports. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.